Good morning, Chairman.
Thank you. Good morning to members, officers, press and public attending this corporate parenting panel. My name is Councillor Stephen Rowe and I'm the chairman of this panel. Vice Chairman Councillor Cleo Periton-Williams is also in attendance. The audio-visual feed of this formal public meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded on the County Council's website following this meeting. There is no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, we need to leave the council chamber through the rear doors and leave the building through the reception into the front car park, where we need to wait until further instructions. Before we proceed with the formal agenda, may I remind you that your mobiles, laptops and iPads should now be on silent mode. We will now move into the formal agenda. Apologies for absence and replacement members. Emily.
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Cook, Polly Coombs and Councillor Whittington, who is observing via Microsoft Teams. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2 is minutes of the meeting of the panel on the 11th of November. This item is to confirm the minutes of our previous meeting held on the 9th of September 2021, pages 3 to 12 of the agenda pack as correct record. Can I ask for a proposer and a seconder, please? Councillor Haig's proposing, Councillor Matthews to second. We will now vote on the minutes. You're voting whether you agree that the minutes are a correct record. That is unanimous then, thank you. Declarations of members' interest. Does any member wish to declare an interest? Nope. Item 4, announcements by the Chairman, Executive Council and Lead Officers. This is a long agenda this morning. I would therefore like to ask officers to summarise the key points of their reports and what is required by the panel. To members of this panel, I would like to once stress the importance of concise questions and contributions. I have no Executive Council announcements. Janice, do you have anything?
No, nothing, Councillor Rowe.
Thank you. Item 5, Commissioning Excellence Meeting, the Sufficiency Duty 2018-2022 Annual Update and Timeline for the Development of the new 2023-2027 Strategy. This item is on page 13 to 54 of the agenda pack and presents an annual update to the Action Plan Appendix A of the Looked After Children Placement Sufficiency Strategy and indicative development timeline for the Children in Care Commissioning Strategy 2023-2027. The report will be presented by Amy Alcock via Teams, and we'll take questions at the end. Is Amy ready?
Amy, are you with us? Mr. Chairman, there's an issue with the sound on the live feed on Teams, so we're trying to resolve this so that Amy can come in. Thank you.
Sorry, Amy, can you hear us?
Sorry, I can just hear you now. So I've not heard anything up until that point. So can you hear me okay?
I think we have you now.
Lovely. Brilliant. Sorry, I've not heard anything before. Are you ready for me to present?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Good morning. My name's Amy Alcock. I'm the Commissioning Manager within Children's Services. We're here today to present the annual progress report against the Children in Care Sufficiency Strategy and looking at the action plan, which is Appendix A within your documents. The current strategy runs from 2018 to 2022. So this is the penultimate update, with the last one due in January next year. Alongside this update, we've included at Appendix B an indicative timeline for the development of the new Children in Care Sufficiency Strategy, which we're starting to develop now. And this will look to run from 2023 then to 2027. A lot of work will be done over the next sort of 12 months with our colleagues, and we'll look to align that to the transformation programmes that are currently running within the council. We're proposing to bring a draft of that new strategy to the corporate parenting panel in July, so you're able to look at the direction of that and what's included and be able to endorse our direction with it at that point. Then the final draft will be presented alongside the last update of this strategy next January for you to endorse moving forward. So the appendix that's Appendix A will detail the updates over the last 12 months. And in a moment, I'll hand over to my Senior Commissioning Officer, Bridie Fletcher, who will just update you on a couple of the key highlights really over the last 12 months. And then hopefully we'll be able to answer any questions that you might have, having read through the document. So that's so I'll hand over to Bridie now to take you through some of the main points within that update.
Hi everybody, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, good. Hello, I'm Bridie Fletcher. As Amy says, I'm a Senior Commissioning Officer within Children's Strategic Commissioning. Every year I pull the update together for the Sufficiency strategy and pull that together from officers. So again, as Amy said, I'm kind of here just to pull together a few high-level highlights of the report and some of the things and the emerging themes that have become apparent over the last 12 months. So the update itself runs from the start of January 21 up until roughly the end of December last year. And so the report kind of highlights various things from a range of children's services, officers and teams about the work that they're doing. There's some impact around COVID that's highlighted. And so if I just kind of highlight a few things that we picked out that I thought were worth mentioning. One of them is around the Children in Care transformation programme that's underway and that started last year, which will come to fruition and start to kind of have a significant impact, I think, over the coming 12 to 18 months. That's focusing on looking and better understanding our children in care cohort in terms of their accommodation requirements, where they're placed, are they in-house, the use of our independent sector providers, and with the aim of kind of reviewing that, pulling it all together, taking it to the placements management meeting, which happens, I believe, monthly. I don't attend, so I think it's monthly. And that's looking at placement need and makeup with the idea and the aim of both reducing budget pressure, but also primarily looking at where we can place some of our young people closer to home, ideally in a family setting. That would allow and will allow the council to wrap our effective services around it. So with our in-house services and both our commission providers, to provide effective support to our young people, to look at, you know, bringing them close to home, close to family, close to services, but also, like I said, hopefully having a positive impact on the budget, given there's been a rise over the last 12 months or so in children in care numbers. Alongside that, the other thing that I wanted to highlight was we are now almost exactly a year into our new youth housing contract, which is commissioned through NACRO and it's called NEST, N-E-S-T. That has 3 sites across Lincolnshire with 72 beds. It's an incredibly well-resourced, well thought through contract, and the first year of its active life, I guess, has highlighted both the innovation and the tenacity of that provider. The willingness to engage with social care and leaving care colleagues has been outstanding. They've got some intensive support units, so some small houses where young people with particularly complex behaviours can be supported before they transition into the larger accommodation hubs. And that's worked really well, and that's decreased our reliance on our INSA providers that were hitherto quite expensive and a little bit more numerous than we would have liked. That's unregulated supported accommodation for 16 and over. So INSA budget has reduced, and a lot of young people with quite complex behaviours have been really well supported through that NEST model. So we're really pleased with the way it's going in its first year. That also, the point about complex behaviours is something that colleagues are seeing across the board in terms of impact on things like Future for Me, on social care teams and on leaving care service. You know, young people are finding things a little bit trickier. They're coming through late entrance into care. So the more services we're able to wrap around them, the better. And that's also threaded through the report about some of the successes of that. Another point to raise would be around the success or the growing success of our digital offer to both our service users and our young people. So through the report, there's some evidence highlighted from different officers around, you know, the work that had been done over the past 12 months, certainly around virtual sessions at children's centres, engagement through our V4C and Big Conversation groups. Caring to Learn has increased its digital offer, as has the emotional wellbeing service. And I think that the report itself, some of those highlights, some of those updates, from officers highlights the point that as we move forward, a digital offer doesn't detract or should replace long-term face-to-face engagement with our service users and our young people, but increasingly it has a really strong focus and can actually deliver really good outcomes. So that's something I think that will remain, and that the report highlights is intended to remain going forward, alongside an increase in a return to face-to-face engagement. I would highlight some interesting stuff around the leaving care service, but I see Kerry Mitchell is here, and I think Kerry is going to deliver a report and the 6-month update on the leaving care service itself. That service is doing incredibly well. It's effective, highly effective at supporting our care leavers. Our KPI numbers are really high, and Kerry will pick up on that. Obviously, I contract manage that service from the commissioning team's perspective, so I can answer some questions, but truthfully, Kerry's probably going to talk you through that in a bit anyway. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight was that from a commissioning perspective, we are looking this year at we're underway at the moment, service review of our open select list procurement methodology, as well as our closed ordered list procurement, which looks at supported accommodation for unaccompanied asylum seeking children. So there are the two reviews. There's the OSL review, which looks at INMS providers, so independent non-maintained special schools, residential providers, foster care, and INSA, so intense needs supported accommodation, which is unregulated accommodation for 16 plus. So they're the 4 key strands that will be they're under review at the moment. Both those 4 strands for children's independent placements and the UASC supported accommodation closed ordered list review are due to conclude over the summer, with the aim of putting any replacement procurement practice and system in place by September and October this year. So that's the way they're kind of working at the moment. In terms of a review, they're highlighting that it's all been very effective. It allows us to plan for placements and commission individual packages of support for young people, and the review is showing that actually they're both very effective. So we're looking at that at the moment, and those initial papers should go to DLT in February. In terms of the closed ordered list, obviously that's for unaccompanied asylum seeking children. That allows us to place on an emergency basis, because we move through commissioned providers where we've already established quality, and we can base our placements on capacity if they arrive out of hours or as part of the National Transfer Scheme. I'm kind of, it's a proper gallop through, so I apologise if I've talked at speed. If there are any questions or anything else to do with the report, Amy and I are happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Okay, thank you very much. Cleo, do you want to handle questions, please?
Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Matthews. Councillor Matthews, could you put your microphone on, please?
Of course I can, sorry, my apologies. Chair, it's page 31, part 19, recommission low-level supported accommodation. And what are we concerned about? Whilst voids are well managed to reduce impact on the budget, some capacity is required to be able to respond to referrals. I wonder if someone could quantify that concern, please. Does that mean there is no room available, or we're on top of it, or we're worried about getting room in the future?
Thank you. Just having a look. Sorry, it's quite tricky on the thing. Just to looking at the section that you're looking. Did you say it's page 31? Sorry.
Sorry, page 31.
31.
Heading 19. Am I on the right page?
I understand what you mean, Councillor Matthews. So the point there was that the youth housing contract commissioned 72 beds, and at any given point there might be one or two, if not a few more, void beds. So it's the balance of completely filling the 72 versus having some capacity for young people that present as in need of accommodation. And it's just making sure that we've got that balance right within the contract, that it'd be wonderful to be full, but being full presents its own challenges, if you see what I mean, because sometimes then that means that you can't accommodate somebody at really short notice. However, NACRO and Nest do manage that really well. They look at what capacity we've got, where young people can be moved around and supported to kind of move through the service. One thing I didn't highlight earlier is that the Nest model also pretty much allocates a corresponding bed outside of the contract to enable move on at 18. So whilst we do sometimes have some vacancies, and that has to be balanced in terms of budget pressure, vacancies, broadly speaking, at least a few, are good, but we've obviously got that throughput that allows young people to not just be accommodated up to 18. They can move through and they can have support post 18. Does that go some way to answering the question? I feel like I haven't quite covered it, but
I think in addition as well, Bridie, to what you've just said, whilst the contract is for low-level supported accommodation and to support those young people, it's obviously a responsive service as well in terms of youth homelessness. So it's about making sure, as Bridie was saying, that there's a capacity within that contract to be able to deal with any young people that present as homeless at any given point. So it's a careful sort of balancing act, really, but we work very, very closely with NACRO to make sure that we've got that balance right. I can see that Andy's got his hand up as well. He's obviously involved with contracts. I don't know whether you wanted to come in as well, Andy.
Yeah, it was just, I think that was, you've just raised the point that I was going to raise, Amy, that we've got a statutory duty to accommodate homeless 16, 17-year-olds as well. So it's actually about having a little bit of capacity to respond to those presentations, as well as moving young people through our accommodation options as well. So a little bit of capacity is needed there to be able to respond to emergencies as well.
I absolutely understand the operating process you're going through, but is there a policy or a strategy that says you occupy 70 beds and you retain 2 beds for contingency all the time? Or I think what I'm concerned about is that could there be a situation where there's a presentation of 3 people requiring beds and we're left without accommodation? Could that happen?
I suppose technically it could, but I don't know that we've been in that situation. I think it's quite a fluid contract, so young people move around within it quite a lot. They're only in there really for a maximum of 2 or 3 years if they stay stably in those placements. So it is quite fluid, and as I say, we manage it with the provider on an ongoing basis to make sure that we've got the capacity right. But there isn't a policy where we tell them that there needs to be beds that are kept free, as it were, for those presentations. But as yet, we haven't really been in that position where we haven't been able to accommodate any young people. What we will do is try and move around as best we can. The provider that we have, NACRO, they have other sorts of accommodation within their larger portfolio that aren't part of this contract, and they're very good at working with us to be able to accommodate in those emergency situations with the rest of the portfolio that they have. We also have, I think Andy might have his hand up to say something, a restorative team that are quite newly in post, and I think we always look to, wherever possible, try and support those young people back into the family home if it's safe and right to do so. So there's been a lot of work around that, which is where we've seen some of the demand drop maybe over the last year, with that good practice trying to support those young people home. We also have, if it got to the point where we were completely full and we weren't able to accommodate those young people, we have a spot purchase arrangement through the Open Select List as sort of the last resort, where we could look to spot purchase accommodation so that no child was left homeless. So as I say, we've never been in that position yet. We've managed to manage it. However, we do have that contingency in place. I don't know, do you want to add to that, Andy?
Sorry, before Andy starts, Andy, could you possibly move closer to your microphone or something? We found it difficult to catch what you were saying last time. Thanks.
Sure. Is that better? Is that better, Councillor Rowe?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, it's just to say that when it comes to our youth homelessness provision to respond to homelessness, this is why I'm in the post. I mean, overseeing the accommodation options that we have to our young people. So if we do spot a slight squeeze within the Nest contract, there's all sorts of other provisions that we have, such as our Rowson and Denton option. So it's always moving young people through and to the most appropriate accommodation option to them. And as Amy alluded to there, that if it did become, we could see that there was a growing pressure within the Nest contract, our youth housing options. We do have the spot purchase option that we very rarely use now, to make sure that we always have capacity and see that young people in their pathway plans and their care plans are moving through the right provisions for them, and making sure that we never really kind of block the system. So that, and as Amy and Bradley also alluded to, that to every piece of accommodation we have within the Nest contract, there's step forward options for young people. Of course, we're always looking for young people to move on to their independent accommodation as soon as possible, be it private rent or onto university, what other options may be available. But as Amy said, we've never reached the point where the system is absolutely full, because we're constantly monitoring where young people are placed and where young people want to be and moving them through their choices.
That was the assurance I was seeking, that we're not going to have young people on the streets at night because we can't accommodate them where we're culpable, basically. It sounds you're on top of it. Thank you. I don't think the wording in the paper expressed it that confidence. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Right, I've just got I don't think we've anybody else got any questions. Yeah, Councillor Coke.
Thank you, Chairman. I suppose it was on the care leaver offer, and actually one of my first observations is it's incredibly encouraging to see how both the county and all the districts and actually other partners are working so closely together on the offer that is being provided, which is incredibly encouraging. One of the items on page 31, which is obviously what needs to happen, so obviously the district council that I'm also on obviously currently offers a free leisure access for care leavers. What progress has been made in terms of encouraging other district councils to do the same, and what is that engagement looking like in terms of trying to get the other districts to work on that together? And then on the point above, you've mentioned about maintaining and improving the core offer. What do you see as improving it above and beyond what has already been listed on this document? As in, what's the aspiration in terms of what we would like to see but we're currently working on?
I think that's probably down to myself to answer that question.
I think it probably is, Andy.
If Kerry and Lisa wanted to chip in on that as well. And yeah, just to say we've made some really good progress recently in terms of the offer, to a core offer to young people from our district colleagues. I'm really pleased to say that from April we will have West Lindsey District Council, South Kesteven and North Kesteven District Councils will be offering access to free leisure activities for looked after children and care leavers. And I'm working with the senior officers around setting that process and resource up so that young people can apply and their leaving care work and can make sure they can access that service. So that's been a really, really good step. There's also been, in the last few years, progress such as council tax relief for young people. Some of our district councils have also identified themselves as fostering friendly organisations. So there's been great steps in the last few years around getting that core offer together. I think in terms of aspiration of core offer going forward, I'd like to see us work on really expressing what the core offer is from health, articulating what it is. Within the core offer on the council website, we're able to list what services are available and how young people can access them and how their leaving care worker can signpost them to them. But I think articulating that in a young person friendly way would be one of my aspirations, so that young people can pick the core offer up themselves and know what the partners are offering to them and what's available, what can be provided, and they can. What we're trying to do is make sure that young people can access the services themselves and independently without the need of support. And I think that will be my next step. But the core offer in terms of general support to young people is growing all the time. And there's a paper I'll be taking to executive soon around the Care Leavers Covenant and the county council becoming a greater advocate for care leavers support and pulling together things like Lincoln Big and the business partnerships. And that's where I'd like to see the core offer going, developing more employment opportunities, training opportunities for young people. And I hope that answers your question, but it's something we're working on all the time, and it's really grown in the last 3 years.
Right, thank you. Any other questions? Then I've just got a couple myself. Page 19, there's a comment: there continues to be a general shortage of affordable, accessible one-bedroom accommodation. Is there a figure that defines affordable? And do you think this is part of the reluctance of some councils to licence HMOs? That's the first question.
Yeah, if I'm honest, I'm not sure how to answer that one. I'm wondering whether Andy might be able to help me out here.
I think if we're looking at affordable, when we're talking about affordable step forward accommodation, we're talking about affordable for the general cohort of care leavers. Young people at the age of 18, the council offers them excellent care and support, and we give them all the advice and guidance we can, but there is a limited financial envelope. And looking at the average rent being in excess of £500-600 a month, young people struggle to fund that. I would have struggled to fund that at the age of 18. I think my rent was £60 a week, and I remember struggling to pay my first rent when I had my first flat. And that the price has only gone up. And then alongside that, we've also got difficulty of working with private landlords. The challenge is private landlords accommodating young people when they don't have a sufficient bond to put down or somebody to underwrite their tenancy, and the risk of non-payment of their rent. It's something that's just not within the gift of the local authority and the finances to be able to do for every young person and care leaver. So it's a blend of all of that, really. And as for licensing HMOs, I couldn't really comment. I don't really know. But there is a general shortage of single occupancy accommodation across the whole country. But again, it's something that we're working on within Leaving Care to develop gap homes, as I've spoken to the forum before about our drive to develop gap homes with Bernardo. So we are looking at creating our own options within that.
Thank you. Kerry Mitchell, I understand you wanted to come in?
Yeah, it's also just to come in on private landlords taking benefits as well becomes an issue, and therefore trying to find rental property can be an issue for care experienced young people.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. I have one other question. Page 27, there's a comment about under the What is Working Well heading, we have care leavers accessing education, employment or training. with a 62% KPI, where the target's actually 65, and then in the report goes on to say that we're concerned about that and what needs to happen. There's a section on that to do with it. I'm just wondering actually whether care leavers accessing education should have come under the what is working well when there's so much concern and comment after that. It might just reduce the concentration on it.
If I will defer to Andy shortly on this, and potentially to Kerry and to Lisa. I think in terms of contract management, I do understand exactly what you're saying. Our 65% is actually quite an aspirational target for that cohort. And there are various reasons that I think Andy and Kerry and Lisa could speak more eloquently than me about, in terms of the challenges that some of our care leavers face around getting into education, employment and training. Now, the 65% that we put a target on, like I say, is quite aspirational. So from a commissioning perspective, to attain 62% is actually really high. In terms of our statistical neighbours and nationally, we're doing really well around EAT attainment for our care leavers. There are some challenges. We would like to do more. We would like to encourage more young people into EAT, but at the same time we have to acknowledge, I think, and that's, I suppose I can see the confusion in the report, but the point would be that it can be both something to celebrate and also something to reflect on, that we're not quite there where we would like to be in terms of aspiration for our young people, and that we've got more work to do. I think if Andy or Kerry or Lisa want to add to that, I think there's only so far I can take that comment, because from a commissioning perspective, I can only reflect that that small percentage difference to me represents effective work. So if I could hand that over and they could add to that, that would be great.
Kerry, I understand you want to come in. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. I think this is an area of work that we continue to concentrate and prioritise all the time within our service. We've just done a lot of work on a whole theory of change, which involved working with multiple providers and also children and young people about what are the barriers to education employment, and we got some additional funding to look at some posts. And actually, from speaking to young people, instead of having two traditional EAT posts, which might help with writing CVs and getting them into college, actually what we're having is a well-being post, because the barriers that young people are telling us is actually, it's my anxiety, it's my depression, it's that I'm getting into education, employment and training, but I'm not able to be resilient enough to maintain it. So we're adapting our service and changing all the time with the learning that we're finding. So I think, as Bryony said, the figures are low, yes, but actually for that cohort of young people, we're doing fabulously. But also it is on the agenda of everybody, from Andy to ourselves to every department, to focus on it. So, yeah.
Thank you. I think Andy wanted to come in as well.
I think Kerry's just put it more eloquently than I could have, Councillor Rose, so I'll leave it there, Kerry.
Right, thank you everybody. The panel is invited to support and endorse the updated action plan for the Sufficiency Strategy 2018-2022, the indicative timetable for the development of the Children in Care Sufficiency Strategy 2023-2027. I move that the panel receives and endorses the report, and that our comments as recorded are taken under consideration. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you are in agreement? Right, thank you. That is agreed. Item 6, Lincolnshire County Council Virtual School Annual Report Academic Year 2020-2021. This item on pages 55 to 94 of the pack covers the work of the virtual school head to support the promotion of educational outcomes for children and young people in care for the academic year 1st of September 2020 to the 31st of August 2021. This report also will be presented by Kieran Barnes, Head Teacher, Virtual Schools, over Teams. Oh, you there, Kieran?
Good morning, Councillor Rowe. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm okay to proceed. Thank you. This is the virtual school annual report for the period from, if I can recall, I think it was from after Eat Out to Help Out through the January lockdown on through the Euros, a couple of months just after the Euros. That's how I kind of reflect and remember the period of time. So essentially, it's for the previous academic year to the one starting in September. The report, some of the, I will be brief, but some of the key messages within the report is that throughout that challenging period, the virtual school team remained focused on being ambitious for our young people and how they learn. And in fact, we continue to ensure that education was everyone's business within that period. And the opening section of the report indicates the kind of support that we put in terms of training, challenge, advice and support to schools, children's services colleagues, and foster carers and parents over that ever-changing period. The report also highlights the fact that we remain committed to the idea of a holistic approach to supporting our young people, and that schools and foster carers and social workers have a responsibility to work together. Both that schools should be certainly more caring, and that a focus on learning is really, really important within the home. And to that end, I think the report highlights some of the developments that we made around caring to learn, making that business as usual last May, but also on the fact that we've extended our frameworks to working within the residential homes, particularly around the concepts of communication and language, which we know that our young people very often suffer a dearth of throughout their passage through care. The report also highlights the fact that the majority of our children and young people attend good or better schools. I'm really fortunate to work in an environment whereby many of our Lincolnshire schools are already good or outstanding, so that makes life relatively straightforward for me on that front. But also we work very closely with our admissions colleagues to ensure that some of our young people who sometimes perhaps have not actually been educated for a period of time are placed in schools that meet their needs in a speedy way to avoid drifting the lane. We do a lot of work around that over the year, and we've been quite successful in that even over the period of lockdown. People premium is also a responsibility of mine to allocate across the local authority, and indeed for our young people who are placed out of authority. And again, our process of personal education plans continued right throughout the whole period. The funding was allocated appropriately, and foster carers, children, young people and social workers continue to attend and support that process. Indeed, you will see in the report that engagement from social workers actually improved over the period, which I'm really pleased to say. Early intervention is a key element of what we do. We know that historically very many of our young people really struggle on the area of communication and language. So uniquely within Lincolnshire, we have a process whereby we've established a relationship with our specialist teacher teams that ensures that all of our young people between age 3 and 13 go through an assessment process, which then feeds in to the personal education planning process that informs schools around the key needs of these young people, so the schools can support and build upon strengths and those areas for improvement for the young people. And we continued again. There was some elements where we fell back behind the curve, as it were, in terms of accessing children and young people for those assessments, but we did catch up later on in the year. And one of the key elements of what we do also is the fact that we have very strong relationships with our key partners in social care, our foster carers, and also our SEND colleagues, for instance, but also we really see the importance of maintaining a strong relationship with our children and young people, and that was sustained throughout the period. And I have to say that a special mention here for our schools, particularly when they went through the process of bubbles, particularly when they went through the process whereby a lot of our foster carers were really quite understandably quite reticent about their young people going to school throughout the lockdowns, fearing that perhaps because of their particular medical vulnerabilities and some of their families' vulnerabilities, that they were, sometimes reluctant to allow their young people to go back in the first instance. But, our schools were terrific in firstly building the confidence and working closely with our foster carers and social workers to ensure that following on from lockdown, there was a gradual improvement in attendance over the period. And also, finally, it may appear a little twee, but I have included some case studies to give you a sense of the work that the virtual school does, but also I've included some of the achievements of our young people, because I think it's really, really important that we see and understand that many of our young people strive to do their best in very, very difficult circumstances. And as you can see at the end of the report, there are some references to some of the remarkable achievements of our young people. So that's really all that I wanted to say in terms of the principal features of the report. The report, I think, is some 56 pages long, so I know there's a lot of detail in there, and I'm sure that members of the panel would like to ask me some questions on that.
Thank you. Cleo, do we have any questions?
No one has raised their hand, but I just have a quick question if there is no one wanting to ask anything. Oh, Councillor Matthews.
I haven't got a question about the report in any way, and I'd like to pass on my thanks for us doing this job very well. But I heard on the radio today that apparently in this year there have been anxiety about children returning to school following COVID, and I wonder, it's absolutely nothing to do with the agenda, but just for my own personal interest, is this going to be an issue for you, Kieran, going forward, or for us going forward, or is it not an issue in Lincolnshire?
I think it's an issue nationally, so therefore, Councillor Matthews, I think it will be an issue for us. I'm confident in Lincolnshire that we have a very good relationship with schools, and I'm also confident that we are beginning to have a growing relationship between our social care teams and our education teams around this whole idea and concept of attendance, and those grey kids who aren't easily identified. And I think we're beginning to put a strategy together to actually develop on how we might challenge that. My other point, I think, is, and I was reflecting on this earlier myself, is that actually schools are really good on attendance. And I think when they get the opportunity to see a straight line, which they haven't been for a period of time, around bubbles, around staff, and around all of those things, hopefully if we get to a place whereby things are returning to normality, I think that schools will get really good at it again and begin to build up and put in those strategies in place that they had previous to lockdown, whereby, 97%, most kids attended 97% of the time. I think that will actually improve things, but I think it will take time. And undoubtedly, I think we're only beginning to see what perhaps are the kind of latent impacts of the whole COVID epidemic over the last couple of years on our most vulnerable kids.
I'm not sure whether mine is directly related to your report, which is probably not very helpful. However, I know from experience currently that my daughter that's at school, she's got bits, sort of knowledge missing because of the how COVID has affected her, and obviously having to not go to school. And I just wondered if we were on top of it in terms of making sure that our cohort, shall I say, have also been made aware of what we've got missing and what we need to work on. Is that something that we are still on top of? Yeah,
certainly in terms of our children in care, we have a minimum of personal education plan meetings at least 3 times a year. And the expectation is that we set specific targets within that meeting, agreed with foster carers, social workers, the education team and ourselves. So that process has continued and will continue. But I do think that there are some implications in terms of catch-up. The main thrust of our national strategy, I think, in terms of catch-up is around tuition. And I think that there's a lot of wrinkles that still need to be ironed out on that. Predominantly around provision in a rural county like ours. The virtual school, for instance, is looking at how we can switch from face-to-face tuition, which is probably the most effective, to something that is a little less effective but more utilitarian in terms of our reach. So we're looking to see if we can get a more virtual approach, to see if we can commission some support for our young people who have fallen behind. And I think that's where schools are looking at this point as well. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Higgs, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Kieran, does the council have the extra flexibility to provide additional teaching for our looked after children, either at the schools that they're attending or wherever they're resident? Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Haig, we do, and we're really fortunate in that we have strategically set out over the last 3 years to provide additional tuition, not necessarily in a traditional way whereby you would approach a teaching personnel, for instance, which is an agency, but we are fortunate that we have our in-house tuition team that we tap into, and we focus and utilise them to support our young people across the county. So we are in a good position in terms of provision of additional tuition going forward, as well as retrospectively we had already done that. We don't provide tuition to everybody, but we provide tuition for all sorts of different reasons. Sometimes it can be around emotional well-being, for instance. That's one area where we would support with a mentor, but predominantly it's around English and maths tuition, and we would target young people who we feel would most benefit from that, and we have done that for a number of years, and we plan to continue to do that. Although I have to say that there is a lot of competition for tuition out there, but again, I think having our own in-house reservoir, as it were, it will be helpful to us going forward in terms of supporting children in care.
Okay, right, thank you. I just have the report in general is great, and I think we're in a good place. Page 77, 7.2, persistence absence. I just had concerns about how this paragraph was written. It goes, our children and young people have performed well in the area of persistence absence, with the last 3 years of complete data showing fewer persistent absent pupils compared to national, regional and statistical neighbour averages. And you read that and you think, oh, that's great, and you keep on reading. And it's not until the final sentence that it says this has left Lincolnshire children, the autumn term indicates that a substantial increase in persistence absence with Lincolnshire children in care. It's, with the greatest respect, it's a little bit of a sales answer, that one, and I would have liked to have seen it more as a factual one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Councillor Rowe. I am fully aware of the contradiction there, but having said that, I felt that it was important that at least one term's data is very difficult to get any kind of a judgment around, what that potentially could mean. I suppose I could have made it clearer. I was referring back to the previous 3 years where we have reliable data. The data for that particular term is not necessarily reliable. That's what all I would say on that front. But your point taken.
Yeah, thank you very much, Karen. The panel is invited to consider and endorse Virtual School Annual Report 2020-2021 and the recommendations for the academic year 2021-22. I move that we receive and endorse the report and that our comments from the discussion as recorded are taken under consideration. Can I ask you to raise your hand if you're in agreement? That is great. Thank you very much. That is agreed. So we move on to item 7, Lincolnshire Leaving Care 6th Monthly Update Report. This item is on page 95 to 104 of the agenda pack and provides 6 monthly update report provided by Bernardo's on behalf of Lincolnshire Leaving Care Service. The report will be presented by Lisa Adams, Service Manager, Bernardo's Leaving Care Service, via Teams. We'll again take questions at the end. Are you with us, Lisa?
I am, Councillor Rowe. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you for that. So I'm here to provide a 6 monthly update report in relation to Lincolnshire Leaving Care Service. Within the report, I've tried to provide a bit of an update about our COVID response and about hopefully some reassurance and assurance about how we continue to see young people. We work very closely with the local authority and try and mirror the response that they're providing to their looked after children. So we have continued to do face-to-face visits with young people, and sort of grade that on an as and when basis. We have used a lot more virtual forums, as I'm sure the children in care teams have as well, including WhatsApp, text messaging, mobile phones. And certainly we have been in contact much more regularly than the 8-week statutory visits that we are commissioned to deliver. We at the moment have got all 4 offices open, and are working a hybrid of working at home and working in the offices when required. And I guess that will change. Well, that changed yesterday, didn't it? So that's our response really to COVID. We've kept a sort of a log right from the start of the first lockdown to be able to demonstrate how we've kept in contact with young people, how we've adjusted our service, and like I said, that's available if required. The next part of the report just looks at some of the accommodation options that we offer within service, and I think councillors have already heard the sort of sufficiency report that was presented by Bridie. I would have to echo the good working relationship that we've been able to establish with the Nest service. We run ourselves the supported lodging service on behalf of the council, and that means basically it's a rent-a-room arrangement where we have young people matched to providers, and then we offer quite a lot of support around that to try and make that placement work. We've had some excellent sort of outcomes from that, and you'll see at the end of the report one of the written pieces from one of the young people who accessed a supported lodgings placement. We run a panel which is very similar to fostering panel, where we review all of our placements at least once a year. And we also review new placements. So there's an assessment process that new providers go through, and we're able to have a look at that information, to have a look at risk assessments around their homes, to consider who else lives in that home, and then, like you said, to hopefully go on and match young people. I've then tried to provide a bit more information around our cohort around education, employment and training, which we've also, like I said, has been discussed already within this panel meeting. I would just like to, I guess, draw attention to, I guess, some of the differences that I think our cohort are in, really. I think if we try and think about our own families, about our neighbours, about families that we know, there's a lot of encouragement to get young people sometimes to go to school, to go to college, to go to work. And we just can't replicate that in service. We do try to do some of that. So certainly with our young people who are on apprenticeships, we'll do morning and evening phone calls. We will take young people to work opportunities. But at the end of the day, we're working with 410 young people. And whilst they have an allocated leaving care worker, we have the 3 additional posts around education and employment, and we just cannot reach everybody on that daily basis, really. And I just think that's important to note, because I think it is particular to this cohort and to looked after children aged 16 and above, really. Kerry made reference to the piece of work that we've done around reasons why young people aren't engaged in education, employment and training. And like I said, she mentioned the new post that we are advertising. That's out for advert at the moment, and interviews are in February. So we are hoping to see if we can chip away at that cohort, really, and do some one-to-one work with that group to try and see if we can improve those statistics. I have made reference to some of the new initiatives that have been going over the past 6 months. Like I said, this report's April to October last year. You've heard a bit about our Gap Homes initiative, which is moving forward. And we now have the specialist mental health worker in post, which is a joint funded post from the local authority, Barnardo's and Health. That post is working exceptionally well. We've got that's contract monitored, and there's another meeting on Monday to have a look at the success really of how that worker is doing. They do consultations not only with young people but with members of staff as well, to try and help us look at how best to work with some young people who are maybe experiencing some mental health issues. It's helping us find pathways into maybe very specialist services within health that can assist our sort of care leaving population. And we're also, like I said, making sure that those young people are prioritised really, and noting any, I would guess, any trends in service. So if we're seeing maybe, certainly at the moment we've had, I would say, an increase in self-harm. So again, trying to target those young people, but also offer training to staff members if that's required. We always provide information in relation to complaints, and during that 6-month period we didn't actually have any complaints from service users, but again we always make sure that information about how to register a complaint or a concern is given out when a young person joins our service, so we can always sort of track that information really. And again, like Kieran, I've tried to just at the end of the report just give some success stories really, just try and highlight some of the good work that's going on by our care leavers really, rather than by the service. It's important to recognise what the young people have been doing really and what they've been up to. We've got some young people at the moment. We've certainly increased our participation offer. So we have had, we've done a piece of artwork with some of our young people, and that's actually been used nationally by Barnardo's, and we've been invited to a meeting with some representatives from the House of Lords to talk about the creation of that piece of work. We've also just got some local sort of offers that have been just really helpful. So again, some businesses in Louth have been great in relation to offering vouchers for young people, haircuts for young people, and grants for young people living around that area. And in my next report, you'll obviously see the stuff that happened at Christmas, but we had some great sort of responses over that period from local businesses. So I'm not going to dwell any longer, but I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lisa. Cleo, do we have any questions?
Councillor Haigh.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 99, about halfway down, it says at the beginning of 2020 started negotiations with Serco, who provide a number of job opportunities. Can you give me an indication of what numbers we're talking about? Thank you.
I can. We are just at the moment moving into our 4th round of mentorships with Serco, and it's tended to be 6 young people, up to 6 young people in each cohort. So we're sort of up to our mid-20s now for young people who've benefited from some one-to-one work with a mentor at Serco. And what's also happened this month is that Serco have approached Barnardo's about maybe trying to look to extend that on a national basis, because Serco have clearly recognised that they've got contracts with other local authorities and they've seen the benefit of offering these sort of one-to-one sessions with either children in care or care leavers. So like I said, we're up to about 24 at the moment who've been through that programme for Lincolnshire.
Has anyone else indicated and I've missed it? I don't think so, no. That's it, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Lisa. I don't have any questions myself. The corporate parenting panel is invited to comment on the contents of this report and to endorse this 6-monthly update. I move that the panel receives the report and that comments from the discussion as recorded are taken under consideration. Can I ask you to raise your hand if you are in agreement, please? Yeah, and once again, that is unanimous. Thank you again, Lisa. 8. Fostering Service Quarter 3 Performance Report. This report on pages 105 to 122 of the agenda pack provides the panel with an overview of the fostering service performance for Quarter 3. The report will be presented by Deborah Crawford, Head of Service Fostering, Adoption and Leaving Care via Teams. And again, we'll take questions at the end. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, Deborah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm here to deliver Q3 report for fostering, and I'm pleased to say that it's hopefully an overall positive report. I would just like to go through some highlighted points, if I may. Obviously, during this quarter from September to December 2021, the ongoing effects of the pandemic continue to have impact in terms of the number of foster carers that we had available to the service. And despite the fact that hopefully we're moving in the right direction, I think there is going to be a little bit of legacy and lag on this in terms of understanding whether people who have had a temporary break from fostering actually wish to return to do that. I think we have seen a rise in the number of children in care, as is quoted within the report, and consequently, I think that this has led to, I'm pleased to say, a slight decrease in the number of independent foster placement beds that we've taken during this quarter. However, I think what we have been able to do is continue to support local foster carers, and that good support and supervision offer both face-to-face and virtually, and the online presence of foster carer support has been and continued to be sterling, really. I think that the strengths that we have are around the good quality relationships, restorative practice. We obviously, where possible, always consider the family network for children as a first option. So as I come on to talk about kinship, our figures reflect a continued effort and success in terms of identifying suitable placements for children within their own family network where possible. And I think carers have continued to support the children really well in a really difficult time and at the end of a really difficult period. And I have to say, we continue to appreciate and respect their continued commitment and how they've reflected their level of kind of resilience and resourcefulness, really, is just outstanding. This quarter has also seen carers enthusiastically take up the offer of the COVID-19 booster rather, which has been absolutely fabulous. And people clearly have remained committed to wanting to be available to foster for Lincolnshire. As in any situation, we don't stand still. Our position reflects, in terms of fostering recruitment and retention, it absolutely reflects a local and a national presenting issue, that recruiting people to become foster carers is no mean feat. It is a situation that is constantly evolving. And if I can just share with you that Fostering Network advised in November 21 that across the country there were 7,300 fostering families short, given the number of children in care in the country. And I think, to give it some context, the approval of foster carers across the country between the 1st of April 2020 and the 31st of March 2021 was 1,005. So it just shows you that there is a significant deficit. So we have to work really, really hard at attracting foster carers to step forward to care for local people for local children. That is absolutely always our endeavour. So we don't stand still, and I think between pages 110 and 114, without giving you the minutiae of detail, actually reflects our quite rigorous and quality approach to our recruitment strategy. We have had a number of carers who have been approved during this period of time. We work really hard to kind of make sure that they sit with fostering panel dates within a timely and regulatory manner. But I think the fact that we have had such comprehensive activity is detailed there in terms of our recruitment events, how we have kind of reviewed and risk assessed doing those face-to-face and online, because interestingly people are telling us they prefer it online. One, because of the timing of doing it, so we can do evenings and weekends, and two, it saves people travelling. So we've also launched the online recruitment system so that when people express or register their interest to become foster carers, they can track their progress through the online system to see where things are at and make sure that there is no delay. We continue to deliver the preparation courses for foster carers or foster care applicants, so there's no delay between their registration of interest, their participation in a preparation course and presenting them to panels. So I'm really pleased to say that we're absolutely on target with that. I think the continued support, training and development, which I think is invaluable not only for those carers who are, or people that are interested in becoming foster carers, but we have utilised our Caring to Learn champions in terms of engaging them in the recruitment process, because they live the experience. They live with children in care 24 hours a day, and actually we work really hard to engage them in helping us tell the general public what it's like to be a foster carer, what are the rewards, what are the challenges, what is it and why is it you want to do this. So I think that's been a real kind of consistent and positive thing this quarter. And I think, the recruitment and retention section that's detailed within the report offers you and gives you some reassurance about how busy we are at trying to kind of pull out all the stops in what I can only say to you. And I feel I've had the privilege of coming here on 3 consecutive quarters, but just to say that, it's a really difficult marketplace out there, and I cannot overstate that really. We face competitors who are businesses, who are not local authorities. So it's just to give it that context really. I think what I would say is that, alongside our strong training offer, our support of foster carers, but not only that, their support of each other has been truly amazing. And I think the key event that we held in October 2021, which was around the celebration event, which was attended by almost 100 people, was testament really not only to, I think, what they do well each and every day, but what we do in terms of recognising how invaluable they are to each other in terms of community. There is, I think, a good community spirit between fostering households, and it's something that we want to develop. It's something that we are very proud of because it actually forms part of the appealability of wanting to come to Lincolnshire to foster. I've alluded to in my earlier comments about the importance of placing children where it's safe and reasonable to do so and in their best interests with their immediate or extended family network. And the work of our kinship service it just keeps going. From a statistical point of view, we in Q3 had 47 referrals. And that includes assessments for private fostering, Regulation 24 assessments for those people who are friends or family to children they are going to care for or have care of, or where we're looking at permanence as an alternative for them by virtue of a special guardianship order within the court arena. I must just say that there continues to be a little bit of a lag in terms of court hearings. So some of those children that are probably with foster carers currently will be moving on to a permanent arrangement, either with carers or someone else. But I have to say the work of the kinship or the fostering kinship service has been again testament to the amount of work that we actually do. We're probably on target. I don't want to kind of over egg this, but we're probably on target for the same similar number as we were last year, and it's a colossal amount of work. I think that with kinship carers that are treated no differently to our mainstream foster carers, so those carers approved to care for anybody's children, we offer the same package, we offer the same support, we offer the same level of access to the online community. And again, I think the fact that kinship carers continue to step forward, and we work jointly with children's social workers to make sure that the child and children in the family and the kinship family are supported in the best possible way, whether it's for a very short period, medium period, or potentially longer term. The breakdown of our work in kinship is detailed within the report, and happy to take any questions about that breakdown if necessary. I think our kind of continued success in respect of kinship is that we have a very clear offer in terms of kinship care. We also have a very clear process in terms of an emphasis on joint working and joint planning for children, and I think that is truly one of our strengths, and that's something that I'm very proud to kind of be leading on delivering, really, and have done so for a number of years. As with anything, we don't stand still in terms of thinking about family finding and permanent options for children, whether they're with kinship carers or mainstream foster carers. And within our kind of recruitment and retention campaigns, we talk about the importance of providing stability, security and safe care for all of our children. And that, you know, is something that is detailed within the report that I'm delivering today. As we reach towards the older end of the kind of fostering bit, really, we talk and move into the area of staying put, which is again detailed on page 119 of my report. But I just wanted to offer you a bit of an overview around staying put. We found that staying put, which is one option for people leaving care. We currently have 40 young people in staying put arrangements. This is a initiative that Lincolnshire piloted back in 2011. So I think it's fair to say that we're reasonably well versed with this. Again, never stand still. Most of our staying put providers continue to foster children, so they have that level of scrutiny, they have that same level of support and supervision, albeit it's not a regulatory function in the same way. But if we're going into a household to talk about children in foster care, you're going to talk about who else lives in the property. So it goes without saying that, you know, as foster carers, they still get that same level of support. For those that have stopped fostering, probably because they've reached the end of their career and actually are quite happy to move an adult through from 18 to 25 or beyond in some instances, they obviously still get a service. We keep in touch with them and they get an allowance and such like. So, you know, it's not a two-tiered service, but it is a comprehensive service, which is as different packages, if you like. So I'm really pleased to say that we don't have a huge amount of young people moving on. Pleased to say about their education, employment, training, that's happening where possible. I think we've had a number of young people where there's been really positive outcomes in terms of moving on into their own property, young people at university, and even though they've been at university but they've been at home because of the online tuition, it's not been a problem to carers who have been extremely flexible and supportive, because I think it's about actually we all want people to get to their majority with, you know, life skills and having, you know, the opportunities in the same way that other children and young people do. I suppose by way of conclusion, I would say it's been another very busy quarter. I've been immensely proud of the fostering service staff who have kind of, you know, like staff across the whole of the council, you know, carried on and you deliver. I think my greatest pride really is still sat with foster carers who have dealt with a number of challenges during the pandemic, and like many of us, but you know, I still stand firm that these are people or volunteers who do it for the reasons, true reasons, altruistic reasons that they do. And I'm very pleased to say that I'm very proud to lead a fostering service who have got so many committed people working across the council to provide local placements for local children that are good quality and high quality placements. So I think, you know, we've done well in terms of engagement. We've done well in terms of keeping foster carers engaged and making sure that children are safe and secure. And I think the joint effort between ourselves, our partner agencies, virtual school, using, you know, the fact that we are, you know, caring to learn is what we do around here, and the efforts of everybody have not gone unnoticed again in what has been quite a challenging but in some respects rewarding quarter 3. So thank you for listening to that, and I will happily take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. I think it's great the the pride you take in your service and how pleased you are when you come and do your report. Cleo, have we got any questions, please?
Yes, Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we're all in this room all very mindful of the vulnerability of foster children and children in care. And when we see what highlights in other parts of the country with other councils, I think we should never rest on our laurels, and we should all be vigilant to the perils that are about. The question is that with private foster organisations, do we monitor them for how they get their voice over to the public to get interest and future foster parents? And the second question is, are we responsible for monitoring private foster children, their welfare? Thank you.
Okay, if I may come back, Councillor Haig. In terms of, just so I'm absolutely clear, when I talk about the independent sector, private providers, I'm talking about private businesses and not children that are privately fostered. Is that the question you want me to answer?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, with all the providers, and I know that I've got colleagues from commissioning on the call who I know only too well, and we work very well together in terms of always ensuring that we have a very rigorous commissioned approach to any private provider that we would engage with. So, you know, there are a number of, I mean, any fostering agency across the country, whether it's a local authority or a private business, have to adhere to the same regulations, the same standards of practice, and are also inspected by Ofsted. So it's a very rigorous regulated inspection of anybody who wants to call themselves a fostering agency. Any Lincolnshire child that's within placed with an independent fostering provider is subject to the same level of scrutiny and the same level of regulation. What that translates into is that each fostering household have a supervising social worker in the same way that Lincolnshire have supervising social workers for their carers. So there's that degree of support and supervision. There's the children in care reviewing process which takes place. So everything that we would do in-house, we also ensure happens away from and with our private providers. We obviously make sure that we check with their, in terms of their compliance with regulation. They're subject to, I don't know whether Amy Alcock's still on the call, but a commissioned inspection, if you like, by us, because if we commission them, we want to know they're delivering it on our behalf in accordance with the way that we want it and in accordance with what our expectations are for those children. So there is a heavy degree of scrutiny in any of those arrangements. In relation to how they recruit and who they approve as foster carers, again, they have to go through the very same as what we do in terms of every foster carer has to be approved by a fostering panel, has to be signed off by an agency decision maker. So that level of scrutiny and tiers of kind of quality assurance is exactly the same as what we deliver in the local authority. We never place children without thinking about, is it the right child for the right family? Is it the right child who will be with other children potentially? So we match those placements. That often entails those private providers seeking the views of everybody else who's got children in that arrangement, so that we can ensure compatibility wise that we're not setting up a situation that could likely, you know, fall down around us, i.e. we want children to have that security and stability. So there's a high level of governance is what I'm saying, but they are the very people that we're also competing against, who are operational businesses who, you know, obviously charge local authorities considerable amounts of money providing that service. So that's why, you know, obviously our endeavour is always to find and source our own suitable care arrangements for our children.
Okay, just a comment from my side. I'm pretty conflicted over this commercialisation of fostering. I believe in the open market. I believe that the market will find its level. But this, where money is going out for profits and dividends to where it should be supporting care for children, makes me a little bit concerned, and I know I'm not the only one. I don't suppose there's a lot I can do, but I just wanted to make that comment. Cleo, do you have any other comment?
Yeah, Janice would just like to come in.
I would absolutely echo that sentiment. Thank you, Councillor Rowe. I just wanted to add something to what Deborah said, is we have just been in conversation this week with Corporate Audit, and they're going to undertake an audit of our recruitment and retention processes, just to kind of give us a little bit of a benchmark about where we sit, and they will be looking at that in the national context. So I think, Councillor Haig, that will pick up some of your questions around how do the private providers kind of recruit their foster carers, and we'll be doing some comparing and contrasting. And I think Deborah just probably didn't answer the question that you asked about the welfare of the other children. What I would say is we don't have any responsibility for those children from other local authorities who are placed in Lincolnshire within private providers and private provision. The responsibility remains with their local authority. So just thought I'd add that. Thank you.
Do we have any? I just got a comment which sounds as though it's been addressed anyway. I was going to ask about. I know we register what responses we get from the marketing, and I was just interested in what was working best for us. But I think if there's a report being done, then that'll come out of that. So if we've got no more questions, thank you once again, Deborah. The panel is invited to consider and comment on the report, and the report be accepted as an accurate overview of the fostering service Q3 performance. I propose that the panel receives the report and that comments from the discussion are as recorded, are taken under consideration. Can I ask you to raise your hand if you are in agreement? Once again, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Then that's agreed. Item 9, Children in Care Annual Report 2020-2021. This report on pages 83 to 98 of the agenda pack sets out the core activities which cover the period 1st of April 2020 to the 31st of March 2021. This item will be presented by Elizabeth Bunny, Lincolnshire Community Healthcare Service. I've got an or in here, and I'm not sure whether that's right or if it's just you, Elizabeth.
I think Nicola is online.
So Nicola Wilkinson. Yes, sorry, I'd missed the teams bit, and Nicola Wilkinson. And obviously we'll take questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So as said, this report is from the year April 20 to March 21, so that's almost a year ago. And it's a joint report between Health, CCG and Social Care. I won't go through it in detail. It's a well-known format for the report that comes every year. So I will concentrate really on the key messages and where we are with the recommendations for this year, if that's okay. And as detailed in the report, the number of children in the care of Lincolnshire County Council was 680 at that year end. That was an increase, and it has those numbers have continued to increase. And the number of children and young people placed into Lincolnshire from external authorities also continues to rise. And as we were talking earlier, I mean, these children are sometimes placed with family members that live in the county. Sometimes they're with the independent foster carers, which we were just mentioning before, and also that we have a large number of independent residential homes in the county, particularly in the southeast, and quite a lot of young people are placed in those homes. And whilst they remain the responsibility of their placing authorities, as Janice says, if they're living in Lincolnshire and they're registered with Lincolnshire GPs, then it's our team that do their initial and review health assessments. So that obviously impacts quite a lot on our workload. As we heard from Andy and Lisa earlier, the 16 to 17-year-old age group now takes up 20+% of the looked after population, and that relates also quite a lot of those young people are within the youth housing, which we were hearing about earlier. And obviously coming into care at 16 and 17 poses different challenges for those young people than if they'd been younger. The majority, well, not the majority, but the aim is to place as many as possible within kinship placements. During the reporting year, the first half of that reporting year, no, it was the year before, the nurses were doing the initial health assessments during the initial first wave of COVID, and we were doing them mainly virtually by telephone or by video, and we were able to improve our the numbers done within the target days of 20 working days during that time. However, due to a decision made by the Royal College of GPs and Child Health, they decided that nurses were no longer allowed to do those, so we went back to the GPs doing the health assessments, and I'll mention a bit more about that later on. However, the nurses and the team, we do have a good percentage, 95+% of review health assessments are completed within the time that they're due. The immunisation and vaccination figures and dental attendance has been impacted by COVID. The immunisation team are working hard to try and catch up on those immunisations that were missed in schools, and we continue to work with foster carers to get any children that have the immunisations that are due at the GP to try and get those back up to date. The dentist is a real challenge, and that's something which we are looking at locally. I think many foster carers, every day, every week I get calls because they can't get children into the dentist, and we keep working with that. So the recommendations for the current year were that the local authority, the CCGs and LCHS would continue to work together to improve the number of initial health assessments completed within the statutory time frame. We've had a lot of meetings about this. We're working on it all the time, and we're adapting processes and to try and improve that time frame. We've managed to recruit 2 GPs that work for LCHS to do the initial health assessments for us, and also one of the community paediatricians from the hospital is also offering some appointments for us, which is lovely because it's really good to actually have a paediatrician doing those assessments, because that's the gold standard for these children and young people. However, that's improving the quality, but the number we're still struggling with, because during COVID we lost most of our GPs who used to do the health assessments, and we've only 1 or 2 have come back. The others are still, their workload is very heavily on the COVID side. So we're still struggling with numbers, but we're working on it all the time. And then, the rest of the recommendations are those for the local authority, which probably I can't say much more about, I'm afraid. So if people are happy with that, then I'm quite happy to take questions, or Janice will respond to questions on behalf of the local authority.
Thank you, Claire. We have some questions.
Councillor Haig, please.
Thank you. Elizabeth, you say that the number of increase is almost 10% over the last year of children in care. Mm-hmm. Is there a percentage of that by unaccompanied migrants coming into the country? And the follow-on question for that is, does that have its own particular problems of being able to converse with them, for want of an easier way of saying it? Thank you.
We do have a number of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children that are looked after by Lincolnshire County Council. It tends to go in, it waxes and wanes, but we've just had very recently, so not to the scope of this report, we've had another increase because of the National Dispersal Scheme. So children that land in Kent, and now they're shared out with all the local authorities. Because Lincolnshire doesn't have suitable provision for these young people, because we just don't have the families that, with the culture and the language, the 16 and 17-year-olds, the majority go to a provider in Peterborough called Locate, where they have a really good supported accommodation provision for those young people, and they have the interpreters and everybody that we need to use alongside when they're having their health assessments. They also provide, I think we've recently had some going to a similar provision in Nottingham. So they're not a significant number, but yes, they have obviously very specific needs. But I think Janice would agree. I think we meet those needs fairly well, and there are systems set up to ensure they get the care, and that the use of interpreters means that they understand. Yeah.
Councillor Matthews.
Thank you very much for this report. I'm going to follow the same sort of line that my colleague has, Councillor Higgs. 22% of your population are 16 to 17-year-olds. That age group, we know, has all sorts of complex issues to deal with, whatever their ethnicity. And they are in a significant group. Can you explain what's happening about education? What they actually do with their time during the day, and what the prospects are for them having, if you like, 2 successful years with us and moving on to further or continuing education. Is the budget capacity sufficient for this? Because nowhere in your report do you talk about cost pressures, but I can imagine that there are significant cost pressures brought about by the demands of this group. And I just think they're difficult to manage and control anyway. So I'm sure you've got the flavour of my first question concerned. My second question is, I don't fully understand, although you did explain, it's my fault. What does placed into Lincolnshire by external authorities actually mean? Does that mean they are placing young people into our purchased care, or are they placing them into parental or familial houses? Again, I'm not clear about what my question is, but it looks like we're being done onto, and I can see that if it was 10% last year, with the mess we got in the country, it could be 15% this year. It could suddenly become very difficult to deal with.
I can answer your second question, but the first question I think would be more to the education, because I've got a health background. But when it's children and young people placed into Lincolnshire, so they're looked after. So, for instance, you might have a child that's in the care of Nottinghamshire County Council, but for whatever reason, it may be that they've got a granny who lives in Lincolnshire, so they come to live with granny, but they're still in care of Nottinghamshire. It may be that there isn't they can't find suitable foster carers in Nottingham, but there's a foster carer who works for an independent fostering, so it's got no financial impact on Lincolnshire, but to Lincolnshire County Council. So that child's placed with an independent foster carer in Lincolnshire. Remains the responsibility of Nottinghamshire, but our health team, we will see them. Or again, they may be in one of the independent homes. So they're not taking up, I would say they're not taking up Lincolnshire places, are they, Janice? They're not taking up places that our Lincolnshire children would normally be in. It's just does that explain it? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And the first one was around education.
I don't know whether Kieran or Andy's on the call. They could probably speak to that. Kieran's not. Andy?
Yeah.
Thanks, Andy.
I'll tell you what. I'll let Kerry speak to it. Then I'll come in anything because Kerry being the assistant director for the Leading Care Service, we can put the combined response. So if you want to go, Kerry.
Yeah, I would just really echo what you've said, that they are a challenging group of young people due to the fact that they come into the care system late. They don't really see themselves as a care young person, and they want their freedom, and they are very complex and hard to support, but we do our best. And I think you'll see that our stay in touch figures are really high, and that's down to the great relationships that our workers build with these young people. but they often come in late because of the complexities, and that takes a number of years to sort of work through. Sometimes some young people, it can be less, but I think the behaviour and sort of their normal mental health issues that they come in with later are complex and do impact on their education, employment and training. So again, when you see the EAT figures that we're working to, that is some of the complexities in which we're working.
Yeah, I mean, I think succinctly put, Kerry, it's just recognise those young people come into care late and they have their individual challenges, 16, 17, they haven't had that longevity of time in care to settle. And, you know, and when young people come into care at 16 and 17, it's often quite a chaotic entry to care through things like homelessness, etc. So there are unique challenges that Kerry and her team work on every single day. And as she says, I think the in touch with service figures at the moment are in excess of 97%. And the Leaving Care Service, a voluntary service, young people don't have to engage. So the very fact that 97% of young people choose to work with their leaving care worker on a voluntary basis is testament to the fact that they've managed to strengthen and kind of galvanise that relationship early and take these young people through to the age of 21 and through to 25.
Councillor Matthews, did you want to come back?
I think my question, and there is absolutely no hint of criticism here. I think we're doing a fantastic job with these from what you report back to us. I'm not sure if we have the wherewithal to produce the outcome. I'm seeking confirmation that we have the wherewithal to produce the outcomes we would want for this challenging group, because we recognise they're challenging. And I know, Andrew, I think you're writing a report for us, or loosely in this area, and I think Kieran Barnes is, about how we deal with this. And I'm genuinely interested in how we deal with this very, very complex need that are our children. I've gone through the notion of having one of my own 16 and 17-year-old challenging us within our household, just because that's what they do. And I'm really seeking an assurance of confidence that we've got a plan for this. The other question, which is completely out of the blue, is about dental care, because I'm on a bit of a drum roll on this one. It's a flipping nuisance, and I hope that that's been reported by your service very widely, because it's youth dental care is quite shocking in my area in Mablethorpe. We haven't got dentists for the general public, let alone for children. So just seeking reassurance that you've raised that with our other health authorities so that it can be responded to.
I can confirm that we have raised that. Yeah, we've raised that, and we've also working with our foster carers to ensure that where they're not getting access to dental care when they need it. The challenge we've got, as you know, is that, and I'm hoping in the next couple of months this will change, but national health dentists are only seeing people in pain. That seems to be their standard practice. But I haven't had any issues raised to me at this point in time, unless Liz or Deborah's going to tell me differently, that where we've needed treatment, we haven't been able to secure treatment.
Okay, have we no more questions or comments? Just a little bit from me. Thank you once again, Elizabeth. I'm assuming that this report's already printed and gone out, but more in proof that I've actually read it. On page 139, 3.3, we say that more boys and girls are represented in the total children in care population. We then go on to say 367, 54% males, and 313, 46% these females. So just if it hasn't been finalised and going out, it needs the word females after the 46%. But I say that's more to prove that I've actually read it. So thank you very much once again. The panel is invited to support and endorse the key messages and recommendations of the Children in Care Annual Report 2020-2021. I move that we support and endorse the report and that comments from the discussion are noted. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you are in agreement, please? Once again, that's everybody, so thank you, that is agreed. So, a long agenda is shortly coming to an end, so we're on to item 11, the panel work programme. This item on pages 169 to 171 of the agenda pack enables the panel to comment on the content of its works programme. The report will be presented by Chiara, Scrutiny Officer, and we will take questions at the end. Thank you, Chiara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The work programme is being reviewed at each meeting of the Corporate Parenting Panel to ensure that its contents are still relevant and will add value to the work of the Council and partners. There has not been any changes to be reported to the work programme attached with your agendas. If there's any further items that you would like to request to see, any area of interest and additional focus to be placed on, please do let us know, either today or via email, and we will happily look at slotting it in the work programme for the next year. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. I spotted Councillor Matthews there. If you'd like to come in.
Thanks very much. I know that Andrew said he was writing a report and doing some work, and Kieran is on this 16, 17-year-olds, but could we have a very specific report about the issues caused by those male-dominant groups of 16, 17-year-olds, about engagement with education and continuing education, about what we're doing to make sure that we give them the very best offer and that they get the very best opportunity to continue into education. Beyond, I think it needs a plan. Beyond our very good practice about dealing with it at the moment, I'm asking if we can hone down and look at what we're doing, because I think it's important for us that we do so for them as well.
Yeah, we can arrange that. I'll pick that up with Andy and Kieran and Kerry.
Thank you. Do we have any more comments or questions? Okay, so the corporate... Sorry.
Apologies.
Oh, sorry.
Apologies. Do you want to add it to the March agenda?
From memory, March is quite thin, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. Of course it is, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you very much. The Corporate Parenting Panel is asked to agree the work programme and identify any future items for future meetings. I move that we note the report and approve the existing work programme plus the addition of Councillor Matthews' input, detailed in pages 169 to 171 of the agenda pack. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you are in agreement? Right, thank you. That's everybody again. Thank you. That is agreed. So this concludes the business of the meeting. Thank you everyone for your attendance, and goodbye.